Here. Happy November. November is Native American Heritage Month. It's a time to celebrate the rich histories, diverse cultures, and important contributions of our nation's first people, both in the past and today. As you may know, there are many different Native American tribes. Over 500 are recognized by the government, but even more exist, all with their own culture, language, foods, traditions, dances, stories, and more. Today I'm going to read to you How Raven Got His Crooked Nose, an Alaskan Dena'ina fable. A fable is a short story, usually with animals as characters, that teaches us a moral or lesson, and it's often passed down over many generations. Let's read to find out what the Dena'ina fable has to teach us. The Dena'ina people still live in south central Alaska and continue the traditions of their ancestors to this day. How Raven Got His Crooked Nose, an Alaskan Dena'ina fable, retold by Barbara J. Atwater and Ethan J. Atwater, illustrated by Mindy Dwyer. The reason that it says retold is because this is a story that's been passed down by generations. They probably don't know who wrote it originally. And so it says retold instead of written by. How Raven Got His Crooked Nose. "Slow down, child," said Grandmother. "It is better to take your time and do things right. Do you know the story of how Chulien, the raven, got his crooked nose?" Granddaughter shook her head. "No? Then sit and I will tell you a sukdu." And you'll notice at the bottom here, it shows how to say the words that are in the native Dena'ina language. And sukdu means story. Once, Chulien had a very straight nose. He thought it was quite handsome. He was able to do many things with his straight nose. But Chulien was a trickster, and sometimes he did things that were not wise. Sometimes they got him in trouble. One day Chulien sat above a little creek. Things had not gone as planned. Now he was suffering from a bad injury. "How long have I been sitting here?" Chulien ruffled his feathers. He was beginning to feel better. Then Chulien remembered. "My nose, my poor nose, what am I to do? Croak!" "But how did Chulien lose his nose?" asked Granddaughter. "He would never say, my dear. Maybe he was too embarrassed," answered Grandmother. Chulien noticed the birch tree he sat in. He peeled off a curly piece of bark and placed it where his nose had been. When he really thought about it, Chulien did know where his nose was. Even though he often acted silly, Chulien had a way of knowing things. He had special powers. Yes, he knew where his nose was, but how would he get it back? The bubbling creek below Chulien flowed into a lake. A small village was nestled on the hillside above it. While Chulien was thinking, a cheetah from the village walked to the beach to gather driftwood for her fire. As she reached for a piece of wood, she noticed something. And cheetah means old woman. "Yada-dee, what is it?" She brushed off the sand. She examined Chulien's nose. This will make a good tool." And so she tucked it into her ulkisa, a sewing bag. Cheetah found Chulien's nose useful for many things. She used it to clean the sides of a bowl of nivagi, her favorite dessert. She used it to scrape her squirrel skins to make them soft and clean, ready for sewing. She used it to take the scales off salmon before she filleted them. Yes, Chulien's nose was a wonderful tool. Cheetah used it so often that it was beginning to look a bit worn. Julian knew Cheetah had his nose, but he didn't know where she kept it. He had to find a way back to get inside Cheetah's home to get his nose back. Crook, crook. How will I do that? Julian ruffled his feathers and made a decision. He needed to be in human form. With his special powers, he did just that. What else can Julian do? Asked Granddaughter. You will see, said Grandmother. Next, Julian found a beach near the village. He drew pictures in the sand. One, then another, and another, and another. Using his powers, Julian spoke to his drawings. Be alive. A breeze rippled over the drawings and made them rounded and lifelike. Eyes opened, fingers moved, arms lifted, knees bent. They murmured to each other. Then all at once they stood upright. Julian called to them, Follow me. The group walked toward the village. Crook, crook. Make lots of noise. Crook, crook. Julian wanted to scare the villagers into running away. It worked. They did scare the villagers away. Cheetah ran away too. Why do you think he wants Cheetah to run away? What's your prediction for what's going to happen next? Julian knew he did not have much time, for his magic did not last long. His sand drawings would disappear soon, and the villagers would return. He looked near the bowl of Nivagi. His nose was not there. He looked in the pile of squirrel skins. His nose was not there. He looked on the table with the salmon fillets. His nose was not there. As Julian rushed around Cheetah's house, his magic began to run out. Where was his nose? The villagers were returning. Cheetah was close. At last, Julian spotted the ukesa. Inside, he found his nose. Just in time, Julian jammed it back onto his face and flew away. Julian was so happy to have his nose back. Crook, crook. Well, Julian got his nose back, but if you look carefully, you will notice something a little different. It had become soft and worn from Cheetah's use because he was hurrying. Julian did not notice, and because of his rush, he jammed it back on without care. This is why Julian has a crooked nose. It is always best to take our time and do things right. We may not get a chance to fix our mistakes, said Grandmother. Just look at Julian. He still lives with a crooked nose. Doc quid yuk, and that is what happened. So I believe that Doc quid yuk means, and that is what happened. Here's a little bit more about the Alaskan Dena'ina stories. The Dena'ina are an Athabascan language native people that to this day live in the southern part of Alaska, mostly around Crook Inlet. They are the only Athabascan tribe to have migrated or moved and taken up residence at a coastal location. Their stories were often told to remind or teach their children how to behave. They discuss difficulties the people dealt with. Some are more historic in nature. They all tell something about the culture of the Dena'ina. The story of Julian's crooked nose is a teaching story. Raven, prominent in the Dena'ina story lore as the trickster, often committed naughty and sometimes foolish acts. Like many animals in the Dena'ina stories, he had special powers that enabled him to do fantastical things. Dena'ina homes were often built on hillsides away from the shoreline. This made surprise attacks from enemies difficult. Squirrel skins were important to the people. Dena'ina women would climb a nearby mountain in the fall and spend several weeks trapping the Arctic ground squirrel, also called the parka squirrel. They made beautiful warm blankets and parkas from their skins. Salmon, an essential food of the Dena'ina, was smoked to preserve it. The salmon was made into a kind of jerky that was eaten throughout the winter. We use Dena'ina words where appropriate to remind us of the Dena'ina origins of the story, or suktu. Dena'ina stories throughout time have ended with Daki, I have to go back and look, Dakquidyuk, meaning, and that is what happened. Chinan, thank you. And here there's a Dena'ina glossary of some words, and then a little bit of other things that you can read if you're interested in learning more about the Dena'ina people. I hope you enjoyed that story and learned a little bit about how the Dena'ina passed on their traditions and their ideas to their young.